Scott Horton here, director of the Libertarian Institute and editorial director of antiwar.com. Scott, before we started recording, I was telling you a little bit about my background as somebody who is really just beginning to kind of unravel a lot of the narratives that I accepted when I was in mainstream corporate news. And one of the places that I was really ignorant is foreign policy and the U.S. involvement in, that word I just started hearing a few years ago, regime change. I didn't even know what that was. I feel like a total dummy. My specialty was the environment. So I don't even know if those two are linked somehow behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, but I want to talk to you about all that in a second. Maybe could we just, since we're all talking about Ukraine, Russia right now, and you see the headlines constantly. I just was reading a CNN article, crisis at the border. My first question for you is there a crisis at the border of Russia and Ukraine?
Well, there is a severe arms buildup by the Russians. And now they have promised that, oh, no, we're not invading. We look like we're invading to you. I don't know. But it is quite a buildup. So they're being a bit coy there. But at the same time, I think that at the bottom line, they're being truthful, that they really aren't preparing to invade, that what we're seeing essentially is extremely coercive diplomacy. And the Russians have, very severe and important interests in Ukraine. And frankly, the Americans have been acting like that's either not true or what the hell are they going to do about it? We can do whatever we want there. And Putin is now saying, listen, we want some real assurances. And to be perfectly frank, the assurances that he wants are totally reasonable. It's Bill Clinton, W. Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden who have picked this fight with Russia. When the Soviet Union fell apart 30 years ago, the Russian army was what it essentially was the Russian Empire, right? The Soviet Communist Empire. They pulled their troops all the way back behind the Ural Mountains, set all of Eastern Europe free. And America, instead of saying, all right, we won, and repealing and abolishing NATO and bringing our troops home and being a normal country in a normal time, as Ronald Reagan's UN ambassador Jeane Kirkpatrick had recommended, instead they announced the new order. Now there's only one superpower in the world, us. And we get to do whatever we want, and we get to have our way. And we call it the liberal rules-based world order. And so never mind all the benefits that accrue, at least to the American government and its cronies, if not the American people. This is all selfless. It's all because we just want to spread democracy and the rule of law to the world and security. Everywhere we go and spread our bases, we're spreading security to the world. And then anyone who stands in our way, well, they're the aggressors. How can they get in the way of progress? It's much like in the old Westerns, where the Indians always ambush the Anglos. That way, it's never murder and ethnic cleansing. It's always self-defense against the Indians, But these are pretty, tissue paper thin constructions if you want to take a serious look at them. And frankly, you hear this all the time nowadays, right? Oh, Russian talking points. Oh, these are Russian talking points. Oh, you're on Russia's side of this.
Right.
But does that really make any sense? I mean, we know that during the Cold War, when the Soviet Union was the communist world empire, that there were American communists who were dedicated to the Soviet Union. Now, that was oftentimes overblown, but there were people who were ideologically committed to the USSR. But there's no cult of Vladimir Putin in America now. What does Russia have to offer anyone in America to believe in? A red, white, and blue flag, conservative, Republican, corporatist politics, and the Christian religion? I mean, we already got that. There's nothing really, there is no cult of Putin anywhere. You can't find one. You can find accusations that if you don't see it the same way as the Biden administration, then you somehow have some secret love affair with the Russian regime, or you're being paid by them. You see this on Twitter every day. How much is Russia paying you to say this? Because people can't accept even the possibility that they're just being sold a bill of goods, and that some people know better. That's all it is.
It's starting to make me think of other words that are used to sort of typecast people so you can silence them. Like right now, we often hear anti-vaxxer, like you said, Russian, asset China, whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of
pro-terrorist. How can you love Saddam Hussein so much? They would say, with a straight face, they would say, you're on Saddam Hussein's side. Well, come on. Nobody is on Saddam Hussein's side. The question was, is he really making nukes, and is he really going to give them to Osama to use against your mama? And the answer to all of those were no, those are stupid lies. So that was the question, not whether you love him or not whether he's a hero or not. The question was, is he Hitler and he's about to take over the Middle East with all of his weapons of mass destruction? Is he going to give them to terrorists to use against New York City? And the answer to all of those were strictly negative. Simple as that. And everyone who said that at the time was called a traitor and a commie and Nancy Pelosi sympathizer and whatever it was. But none of that was true. It was just that the hawks were lying. And so the truth was contrary to everything they said. That's the history of the 21st century so far.
Before we get to the rest of this video on U.S. foreign policy and every other topic that makes you want to drink, you should go to AllisonWinePromo.com and check out my favorite Malbecs from Argentina. One from 8,950 feet, an extreme altitude Malbec. Another from the oldest vineyard in Argentina. You get 50% off the wine itself and 50% off shipping. That's Allison with 1L winepromo.com. But maybe you want some high altitude coffee to wake yourself up. Is this really real? What's going on in the world? What is Scott talking about? Then you should go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison. These are also USDA certified organic. They have a wide variety of roasts. They also have a Caturra tea, which is tea you make from the coffee fruits. I loved cold brew mine for 24 hours. It has a great taste, but without the level of caffeine of coffee. So an option for the tea drinkers as well. But whatever you do, before we get to the rest of this video, check out my sponsors, AllisonWinePromo.com, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, and toast to free speech wherever you are. I'm also a libertarian, have no desire for U.S. involvement in Ukraine. I'm tired of echo chambers, though, so I suggest devil's advocate a la John Stossel for part of the interview. How should the U.S. respond to aggression from Russia? Is failure to respond to Russian threats a sign of weakness in the U.S.? How can the U.S. expect support from the rest of the world when we are threatened if we offer no support when others are threatened? Do you advocate isolationism given its failures in the past?
Yeah, well, that's a lot of things, but most of them are essentially begging the question and assuming the conclusion that the Russians are the ones aggressing here. And I think that's really not right. I mean, what you have is, take, for example, this is what Ron Paul would do, right? Is put the shoe on the other foot. So say, for example, that the Russians had won the Cold War, the Soviet Union had won the Cold War. They're integrating all of the Latin America, first of all, Western Europe, and now Latin America into the Warsaw Pact. And now they sponsor a bunch of neo-Nazis to do a violent street putsch revolution and overthrow the government in Ottawa, Canada, and then threaten to kick us out of our naval bases in Alaska and launch a war against the people of Vancouver, British Columbia, who refused to accept the new pro-Russian junta in Ottawa. And the answer, it answers itself. It's obvious. America would go to war over that. We would absolutely go to war. There's absolutely, or they would certainly threaten nuclear war. Look at the Cuban Missile Crisis was 1/10 of that crisis. And Jack Kennedy said, I will burn the world to the ground before I let you leave those missiles in Cuba, pal. And they said, okay, and back down. And he also got the mid-range missiles out of Turkey, by the way, which is instructive, that Jack Kennedy backed down too. But they said, we absolutely will not tolerate the stationing of nukes in Cuba. This level of intervention in Canada, as I'm describing, would also be absolutely crossing every red line, and America would not stand for it one bit. Picture the same events with China in Mexico or something like that. Mexico's going to join the Chinese military alliance. Not over our dead bodies. They're not. It just wouldn't never happen. And yet we expect the Russians to just sit there and take it as we abuse and abuse and abuse them. And then when they do anything, we say they're the aggressor. Will we defend or will we not defend? But that's begging the question, and falsely. It's just wrong. The American empire are the aggressors in Eastern Europe. And the question was, how much is Putin going to appease us before he finally draws the line and says no more?
Let's face it, money is what drives the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us of when he left office. No leader is talking about the Federal Reserve. If there were no central bank, there wouldn't be enough money to fund the evil to the point where it is getting out of control. My question is, what is his stance on the Federal Reserve, and how, if anything, does he propose to deal with it?
Yeah, well, I'm absolutely a hard money guy, and for that reason. I mean, you can read in the National Review, they go, we can't have hard money. What if there's a war? Yeah, exactly. So that's why we want to have hard money, so that the National Review can't lie us in a war again. And that's why they need their central bank, so they can print money, so they can monetize bad debt, so that they can have wars and everything else they want for what seems like free to the American people, who have relatively low tax rates. It's that we just pay through inflation. We pay through the pain we suffer from the boom and bust cycle that's generated by all that inflation, which we're about to learn that lesson. I mean, right now they say that they're going to raise interest rates all year long, starting at their next big meeting. If that's true, then we're facing a massive Great Recession, depression coming this way. You think the economy is bad now? This is the height of the bubble. All this inflation right now, this is from all the money that they printed. The only way to solve that is to raise interest rates up and crash the economy deliberately in order to stifle all that inflation. That is the absolute insanity of central banking in the American style, and all to pay for the world empire. It's absolutely sick. And so, yes, you can see behind me, if you're watching this on video rather than listening later, you can see Ron Paul hanging on my wall there. I'm 100% an Austrian school economics guy when it comes to monetary policy, and when it comes to imperialism for that matter.
As usual, this video has been clipped short for YouTube, so if you want to see everything that Scott Horton and I talked about, from foreign policy to how things have changed with domestic policy in the US, go to my other platforms. The links are in the description. The best place, though, to go is AllisonMorrow.locals.com, where you can become a part of my editorial board and pose questions ahead of time for people like Scott. I also have editorial board meetings on Saturday mornings where you can give me your feedback from the week before or the week ahead and give me ideas for interview guests and story topics to cover. But whatever you do, don't stay here on YouTube. If you want to see what's really going on around us, you got to go somewhere else.